Welcome into the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, are a normal part of life now on Earth. Increasingly, we are exposed in daily life to non-native EMF, as opposed to the natural Schumann resonance, or as opposed to sunlight as a frequency. Non-native EMF can wreak havoc on our health, and with the latest bill that is being passed in Congress, as many have heard, we see within the bill that 600 megahertz of spectrum will be auctioned off by the government within the next few years, which will be used for 5G and also 6G deployment. And because 5G and 6G increasingly need to be closer and closer to their targets as their power increases, the efficiency decreases of how far away they have to be. And so they will need to be deployed in more and more places throughout our environment. But before we get into a little bit more about 6G, let's take a step back before we dive into that. 6G is not expected to arrive, first of all, until 2030. Basically, every 10 years, we go up a generation. So in 2020, we went to 5G, and then 2030 would be 6G. So there's a few essential things to note in terms of what we're looking at for EMFs. Someone to really look into is Robert O. Becker and also Andrew Marino. They wrote books such as The Body Electric and Cross Currents, which I definitely recommend. I recommend just getting Cross Currents as the book to get. So the Schumann resonance and the alpha brain waves operate at a low frequency of about 8 hertz, while a lot of these higher frequencies are megahertz, they're gigahertz, they're terahertz even with 6G. And Robert O. Becker, he worked for the military to study these effects of EMFs on humans and animals. And he found evidence of negative effects, showing that not only would these frequencies affect the biological aspects of ourselves, but also finding that you could actually influence people's emotions, people's impulses, and even people's behavior, all the way down to the will impulses. And so, because EMFs had a large implication for the military in terms of their radar, their satellites, their submarines, the military largely ignored and buried a lot of Becker's findings. And they attempted to silence him in the 60s, back in the 60s and the 70s, and even beyond that. So one of his main discoveries was that bones act as a semiconductor with regions bound by copper atoms. And a clue into this electromagnetic effect on the bones was that astronauts who lost bone mass when they entered into space, because without the protection of the magnetosphere, the magnetic field of our Earth, which they were outside of, they were negatively affected by the radiation. They lost bone mass, they got sick, and we see now even people who get cancer, after being up in space for a long period of time. So anyone that has dreams of going to space, good luck to you. I don't think that's going to work out for Elon anytime soon. And maybe they will fix it, but fix the issues of the electromagnetic fields. But really, they sort of largely ignore science largely ignores these findings. It's very inconvenient truth. We live in a technological society where we operate within these frequencies of 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, 5G, all the time, right? We need it to even exist in some sense. So it's a very inconvenient truth. It would be very bad for the big technology companies who basically run our entire society now and basically boost our markets. Um, and so people's retirement accounts would obviously be affected if we really went after them in the proper way. Um, and a lot of it also has to do with blue light. So it's not just the EMFs that are coming from the cell phone towers or your cell phone or different electronic devices in your home. It's also the blue light that's coming from your screens. So whether that be your computer, your phone, your TV, there's all types of screens now in our environments. And so blue light is, within the visible spectrum. Um, it can also be considered a form of EMF. And blue lit screens are essentially purposely and deliberately designed to addict us to the screen. Um, we can see this going back to the Las Vegas mafias in the mid 20th century. They actually discovered this. They discovered that blue lit slot machines combined with alcohol made people lose track of time, and they kept coming back and they were addicted really to the blue light. The CIA also studied these effects in their MK Ultra research at Tulane University, focusing on how to lower dopamine levels and control human behavior through blue light. So, all screens now, including iPhones, laptops, are predominantly blue lit. And obviously these affect our children now with their addiction to their phones, as we see. And we see everyone walking around like this now. I don't know if you have noticed this. Everyone is actually walking around like this. They also have the wristwatches, which of course are constantly emitting EMF. And another problem with cell phones is that there's a pulse to them. So if you actually measure the EMF on them, you can see that they pulse every couple seconds or so. They're making a connection to that cell phone tower, and this includes your wristwatch. So really, especially a wristwatch that's right around your veins and your blood and your circulation, definitely will be constantly pumping out that pulse. Um, and now we see RFK Jr., who has sort of completely betrayed the true Maha movement that was started by saying that we're going to his vision for America is that everyone wears a wearable device, which is interesting because he's one of the only people that I actually trusted in the political process because he was talking about electromagnetic frequencies, how they're bad for you, how blue light was bad. And he actually even represented people in lawsuits against big tech companies because of cell phone radiation that caused cancer for his clients. So it's very obvious that we have been sold down the river by politicians to proliferate technology and frequencies and blue light. Um, Obviously, this can also cause, blue light can also cause a lot of other biological destruction, which we won't necessarily get into now. If you have more interest, I can also link an article below, which will give you more information about all of these things that we're talking about today. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, the other thing I wanted to cover was just that EMFs also cause voltage-gated calcium channels, which again, funny enough, RFK talked about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. This can lead to oxidative stress, damage to mitochondria, increased neurotransmitter release, which potentially lowers the dopamine. Um, and so they're really a key thing for our neural signaling, our muscle functioning. And, non-native EMFs can really create sort of a white noise that disrupts the normal gating process. And we were never meant to really be exposed to these things. We're essentially in a giant experiment. And again, I know I understand these are inconvenient truths. If you're still here, I appreciate it. I think that it's important for people who are spiritual, people who are studying anthroposophy or spiritual science to constantly be trying to find the truth of what's really going on a scientific level. We do have to bring the spiritual aspect into this as well. Today, I'm not as much focused on that, but it is in the back of my mind and as Steiner would probably say, you need to bring it to the front of your mind. This should all be about the spiritual content, and we need to penetrate through these concepts that we're gaining in the scientific way to understand the spiritual beings that are actually behind these negative things, right? We have to understand the Ahrimanic and the Luciferic and the things that are behind these frequencies that can actually affect us spiritually, because we are electromagnetic beings. So our soul and our etheric body, they have an electromagnetic quality to them. So we're going to get to that in a minute. After I talk about 6G, I'm going to talk about things you can do to mitigate these things. It's not the easiest things to do, but there is ways to mitigate, and I think there's things we can do spiritually as well to help to mitigate these things. So yeah, obviously we know that the FCC and all these things, all these places are captured. Even the NIH and we thought maybe the Maha movement would help, but obviously that's captured as well. So we can't really rely on those institutions. We have to rely on our word of mouth. We have to rely on each other and community and yeah, I mean, there was definitely a time where the Manhattan Project and a lot of the there was a guy, General Leslie Groves, and he realized that if you control the funding, you can control the direction of science. And so he steered the NIH grants towards molecular biology or pharmaceutical treatments and really avoided investigating mitochondrial and electromagnetic links to disease. And so this kind of has led us down this RNA sort of DNA pharmaceutical path rather than the electromagnetic mitochondrial path, which I believe is more of the truthful path that we need to be following and going down. So getting back to 6G now, and it's coming faster now due to this new bill that has passed. Deregulation, technological, proliferation, those are things that we need to be aware of that are coming in the future. We can try to find positive aspects of these things as we normally would do as a spiritual person who is trying to train for spiritual vision and spiritual sight and spiritual understanding. But it may only be three years away, most likely 5. But what we need to understand is, unfortunately, when you get to 6G, you're talking about 60 gigahertz and beyond. And this begins to affect the amount of oxygen which is in the atmosphere. So this actually will take away oxygen. It will make it less available for living systems. 6G can also go even further into the terahertz, where it will reach infrared levels. And that risks interference with the very frequencies that power mitochondrial processes, particularly in those red and infrared regions. So let's talk about what we can do to mitigate these things. So the most important principle is the inverse square law. The inverse square law states that the intensity of radiation or a field is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the source. This is the golden rule of EMF mitigation. So distance is always your friend. Instead of carrying your phone in your pocket, try to keep it in a bag or on your desk or turn it off if you don't need it. Um, for 5G antennas placed on rooftops, lamp posts, etc., try to move even a short distance away, which can drastically reduce your exposure since we know, like I said, 5G and 6G can't travel as far. They also can't travel as well through walls. Um, and so, for the most part, we are safe from those if we are not super close, right? But if you live right near a tower, you may want to consider um, a plan to eventually move away from that, unfortunately. I hope that that's not the case for anyone. I think intuitively people know not to live near towers, but they become more and more prevalent. And so we have seen more and more of those towers that people live near now. So another thing we can do is grounding. So physically touching the earth with our bare feet, our bare hands, our body, just sitting on the earth. This can help to discharge the excess positive ions that we are receiving from the radiation. Um, and so we need to rebalance those body voltages, and the earth has a negative charge. We are able to then negatively charge, and our cells are sort of restored in some ways. There's been studies to show that, cells that are sort of out of in disorder after grounding, they become more still, more ordered. Um, Yeah, so also consider your latitude, geological conditions. Areas with volcanic or geothermal activity can have better grounding scenarios. But relocation, again, that's another great strategy. Try to use Ethernet cables instead of Wi-Fi. Um, definitely don't sleep with your Wi-Fi on. It's important to make sure that your room is completely dark. It's important to not have any light in your bedroom. It should be completely black. Everything should be blacked out. You should also, if you want, you can shut off your electrical cable box to your room during the night. Something you can try to do just to get all that electricity out of your room when you're restoring your body during sleep. Um, you can also use blue light filters, especially the Iris app. So IRIS, you can use that on your computer. You can make your screen more red, and you can also lower the light or the brightness, which is the flicker. And we get that constant flicker from the screens, which your iris is actually going like this all the time when you're on your screen. So you can also buy an EMF detector, a tri-meter, as some of, or the one I have is called. And you can measure, sort of different parts of your home and just see where some of those things come into play. I do want to emphasize that, don't get too carried away with this type of thing. We are pretty well adjusted to this environment at this point. I do believe that spiritually, which I'm going to get into now, we can influence our own electromagnetic field in the soul and even down into the etheric body with our, habits that we create. And we can't really allow these frequencies and these blue light technologies and the sort of military industrial attack that we're under to affect our emotional state. And we can't let it affect our actions and our impulses. We can't let it affect our thinking. We can't let it affect our feeling. We always have to have faith that the future can be better than the past, that a new experience can be different from a past experience of the same type. We can also, try to control our actions as best we can to not act immediately on impulses, which is very hard nowadays, right? It's harder than it used to be. And I think that's because we are in more of an electromagnetic frequency environment. So we are really called to develop spiritually on a higher level so that we are actually in some ways above what's happening, but we are also within what's happening. So we can use our spirit, which is beyond all of this, to influence all the way down into the physical, to the etheric, and to the soul. Right now, we're in the consciousness soul era, so we really want to be conscious of what's happening within our soul. And then we can influence it in these different directions. We can control our thoughts. We can be positive. We can have positivity about the future. Um, we can have detachment, right, from these different emotions that go back and forth. We can try to find that center, find that true self, find that balance, find that I am consciousness within the soul so that you can create your own electromagnetic environment. And then you can be pretty much clear of all of these things. It's not easy, it's harder than it used to be. But that is because we are evolving as spiritual beings. So we want to continue on this evolutionary path spiritually as we see the earth falling away. So the physical is falling away more and more as we see these EMFs and these electricity. That's just causing the earth to actually be destroyed quicker and quicker so that we can move, so that actually spiritual forces are coming in more and more to help us. So we actually have more spiritual capabilities in some ways because the earth is being destroyed. And so that's a positive to take away, right? So that does mean that in some ways time is speeding up. So when we're talking about the end of the earth cycle, we may actually be talking about a quicker time frame that would come in because of all of these new technologies that are coming in, as well as the destruction with wars and all of the other destruction that we've seen from technology for sure. Um, so another thing is just getting out in the sunlight, getting out in nature, getting out in the mornings and the evenings. Again, trying to ground, trying to structure your water is big thing. So you could use minerals to put in your water. There's a thing called, I think, RNA reset, which is a good one. But you can surely find those everywhere. Yeah, you can structure your water as well with crystals or things like that. You can do shungite. You can in some ways influence the etheric environment by having more crystals and sort of shungite and different things around you. Like for example, I have this shungite right here, which is something I keep around. I have this like crystal. I have a meteor actually, or a piece of meteor, which is there. And then I have this tower buster, which is actually um, it's something that sort of it's a little bit woo-woo, but what it can't hurt to try some of these different things to try to mitigate the environment that we're in. And so try to enjoy life. And, we are in this time of, negativity and all these things and fear, but we need to move beyond that. We understand that, things will sort of, in some way, things will get worse on the physical plane, but it will be masked as progress, right? As stocks going up, as assets going up, right? So it looks like everything is getting better. But in the same way, we know that the Earth has already peaked in terms of the physical material nature that scientists and all of these AI enthusiasts and people are saying, oh, everything's going to be so much better. But really they're not understanding that it has already peaked. And so we're past the point where we can continue to be materialistic in a materialistic society. But it does seem also that, we are entering more into a digital age. So, 6G is really looking to combine the digital with the physical. It's trying to even get down into the biology of the human being to connect that biology through biotechnology. It's meant to sense the human presence, to track humans and to track, robots and other physical items that can have devices on them, and then that 6G can really come in and sense the human resonance, which is, it sounds it's crazy, right? It sounds scary. Um, but in some ways, again, we have to work on ourselves we have to match that, right? So we have to match that level of destruction of the physical. In some ways, we have to give up the physical and work just on our soul and our spiritual nature, right? So the physical can fall away. We can get cancer, we can get disease, but as long as we keep our emotions in check and keep our thinking, clear and logical, and we keep our control of our impulses and our will in check, we are evolving through this time of electromagnetic and technological proliferation. So I hope that you got something out of the video today. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really would help me and it would help the channel if you would comment as well. I am trying to do more podcasts like this in the future. I am interested in this topic specifically related to spiritual realities and what we're facing in the future. And I hope to continue to be positive and try to understand that these things are meant to be, and then we have to trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. Truly nothing else will do if our courage is not to fail us, and let us seek the awakening from within ourselves every morning and every evening. Thank you.